Hi folks, and welcome to week 8 of CoderDojo Athenry Modelers 2025-26 sessions, the notes for that, for week 8. So at the end of week 7 we modelled our freighter, and we'd like to now bring that into our scene with our space station and planet. So to add something from another file into an existing Blender file, use the file append option. And in there then we can have a look at our freighter, which is here, and we can append that. Inside freighter we need to look into the object, and unfortunately I didn't name the freighter in the freighter blend file, but cube, this is going to be our freighter model, and that brings it in with the materials and everything else that we included on it, including the CoderDojo Athenry logo. Excuse me. Obviously it's very large and it's rotated the wrong direction, so the first thing we're going to do is give it an OR Z 90, and then that's the wrong way, so we'll do that again, OR Z minus 90 to point in the direction I want. I'm going to scale it down a lot to be about that size, and I'm going to GX to move it along X. I'm just going to check my screencast keys, which should be on, but I don't see them coming up. I don't know why. There we go, they seem to be showing. Okay, so now we've got our little freighter and we can fly it into the space station. It's about the right size to do that. So how do we animate this freighter flying in? Well, very simply, if it was to move from where it is currently to inside, if it was basically just changing the X direction here over time, that would cause it to move along a straight line and inside the space station. And that's exactly what we can do here. Down here within the layout tab, we have this timeline editor. This blue header here at the top shows the current frame in the animation. So the first frame is 1 and the last frame here is 250. You can change these values anytime you want to make this animation longer. If this is a 25 frames per second animation, 250 frames is going to be about 10 seconds long. Not very long, but you can make it as long as you need to. And the process of animating in Blender is basically setting a value and specifying that it's keyframed, it's set, given a value at a particular time, and that's very easy to do. The general key for setting a keyframe is I. If we hover over the model view and hit I, it will insert keyframes for all of the location, rotation, and scale parameters. And you see, having done that, it's now put a little diamond in there in the timeline editor. If I move this header out of the way, it's easier to see. I'm just going to delete that because I don't need to set them for rotation and scale. I just want to set one for location. So instead of hitting I over here, if I just move over the location box here and hit I again, you see that just that becomes yellow now. So now we have a keyframe set on location at time 1, frame 1. If we now move this header to the end here to 250, and in our model it's GX to move our freighter inside the space station, you see now this is showing that these are the same as the keyframe before, but this is different. The colors change just to indicate that. If I hit I there, and this all goes to yellow again, and we see now we have 2 keyframes. And basically we have a change then smoothly animated from one position to another. We can insert as many keyframes as we want in here to get a complex motion. In this case, this is already perfect. The little ship moving in looks great as it is, so we're just going to leave that and not going to do anything more to it. We don't need any more keyframes. But it is interesting to look behind the scenes a bit and see how the value is set to change. This X value is set to change. If we switch temporarily here from the timeline to the graph editor, and I'm just going to roll the scroll here to zoom it back, and I'm going to expand this out to see. So it's the cube object. Oh, again, I really need to do a bit of a cleanup on that. Let me do a quick cleanup here. I'm going to start renaming these correctly. This is the freighter. This is the space station. I should meant to do this at the start. These lights all belong to the space station, so what I'm going to do is select them all select the top one, then shift, select them all, and then drag them, and then while I'm dragging, hold down shift before dropping them over space station. That's going to make them children of space station. So now they belong to space station, they're going to move with it. So those lights are no longer just floating independently. Now that's better. I'm going to also call light sun. There we go, that's better. Now things are properly laid out. Right, so let's go back to the graph view. So you see under freighter, there's an animation called cube 1 action that's based on the original name of the object. Under that it's saying it's changing the object transform, and then it has channels for the X, Y and Z location. X and Y, if you click on them, you will see them highlight, but they're just saying it's 0 all the way down to 0. But on the X location you can see it does this change from this value here at the start down to this value at the start. So that's starting at 14.8 or so, and then going down to 4.5 as I drag. As I drag the timeline, you can see the value changing up here to reflect that. And this curve here, the sort of slow lead in and slow lead out, causes, when it's playing, causes it to start moving slowly and then end moving slowly. It's sort of slow at the start, constant in the middle, and slow at the end. But you can easily tweak these to make it any way you want. For example, if we wanted it to be very fast at the start and then slower at the end, you would get that effect. Spacebar is a way to play the animation. So rather than just dragging this, I'm going to hit spacebar to play the animation. That would mean it would start quite quickly just by dragging these handles around and changing the angle of that. You're going to get a different effect each time. So I quite like that sort of quick to slow, because it feels like it's just arrived maybe from a long way away, and then it's just slowly docking into the space station, like it's just dropped out of hyperspace, moving in. So that's a basic animation done on the freighter. I like this fast to slow version of the animation, so I'm going to leave the curves like that. It looks good to me. Okay, I'm going to hit spacebar again just to stop it animating. So the next thing I want to do is just to show perhaps that you can also animate other things, not just positions, but you can animate shaders equally. So what I decided to do was I decided to take planet here and duplicate it. So I can do object, duplicate objects, and then I'm just going to hit right click to leave it on top of the old one. So we get planet and planet 1. I'm going to rename this one to atmosphere. And I'm going to go here and just make the scale a little bigger than the scale of the planet. So if that's 110 more or less, I'm going to make this, in my case, 111. If you had your own planet with a different scale, you would look at to go just a little bit higher. I'm going to switch to wireframe and X-ray mode here, just so I can see the two. You can see the black of the planet inside the orange of the atmosphere, so that looks good to me. Just want them on the same position, but the atmosphere a tiny bit larger. And then I'm going to drag atmosphere here, and then with the shift key held down before I let go, drop it over space, oh no, not over space station, excuse me, over planet, Control Z, drop it over planet, and now it's a child of the planet. So the planet and the atmosphere now belong together. Me going back to material preview mode. So at the moment the atmosphere, let me select it here, has got the same material as the planet on it. So let's just go here to the material tab and take that away and create a brand new material which we'll call atmosphere. And we're going to make this a semi-transparent material so that we can see the planet underneath this sort of layer of clouds that we're going to get with the atmosphere. So I'm going to switch over to the shading tab, and we're going to work on this atmosphere. Again, I'm going to switch to material preview here, and let's just focus on looking at the planet. And let's make sure here in the shading tab that we're not in the world shading, but we're in the object shading here. So the world is all about the background. If I switch to fully rendered, we'll see that, remind ourselves, this is the background we set, this nebula background. We don't want to change that. We just want to change the material of this object. So we're going to switch to object mode there. And we're already in the We've got the atmosphere selected, so the atmosphere material is here. So at the moment it's just all white. So I want to get a random texture that's going to give us a sort of a cloud-like appearance. So I'm going to add one of my favorite random textures, which is the Voronoi texture in. And I'm just going to connect that distance of output from that into base color. At the moment it's not going to look very cloud-like, but we're going to manipulate it to look a bit more cloud-like. And I'd like to increase the amount of black, which is going to be sort of the no cloud, and decrease the amount of white. So to do that, an easy way to do that is to use a color ramp, which is under converter. I'm going to drop that there over those two and hopefully it'll connect in. And by sliding the black here, I'm going to just intensify those pools of black. So now the white is wispier. I'm also going to slide that back so that the parts that are white are more strongly white. Okay, so again, this is not looking cloud-like, but we're going to get it. I want to get it so that it sort of stretches across the planet in more lines than the sort of evenly distributed look that it has right now. We don't have any texture coordinates coming in here, so I'm going to add some input texture coordinates. I'm going to drag the UV into vector here. Now, using the UV map is going to work quite well for us, but it is going to give us a seam at the back of the planet. So we're going to have to make sure that our planet is rotated so that seam is away from the camera. But it is going to be, so that doesn't matter to us at all. And what I want to do now is I want to stretch this texture so that it's kind of longer across the planet. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to add another node here, a mapping node. Convert, is it under vector? Yes, mapping. Drop that in there, and if I tweak the scale value here in the Y direction, what you're going to notice is it's going to have this effect of kind of stretching across the planet. It's really scaling from pole to pole, but instead of giving these sort of very even circles now, everything is kind of elongated, and that I like that. This sort of wispy look of things going across the planet is more what I want. It's more what I'm looking for. So I might just settle that value at 6. But it's very even now at the moment, and I'd like to randomize it up a little bit more. So one of the ways I could randomize it is to put a little rotation, random rotation onto it, and that would certainly help to just to give it a little bit more interest. So let's add another random texture. This time we'll use a noise texture. And remember, I told you before that color values and vector values are more or less interchangeable in the shader editor. You can treat a color like a position or like a rotation. So I'm going to throw that in there and we'll see what effect it has. And it really rolls it around, but it's a bit too strong. So I like the effect, but it's a bit too strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a vector math node. Vector math. Where's that vector math? Under converter as well. I'm going to drop that into place. I'm going to change the mode here of this vector math node to scale, and then I can decrease the strength of that until the look is more like what I want. So 0.3 or 0.2 perhaps would look good. And then you can just tweak a few of these things until you're happy with the appearance of the clouds. It looks like what you'd like them to look like. There's no end of little parameters here you can fiddle with. But yeah, maybe I like that, I think. There might just be slightly too many. I'll bring the scale back down maybe to 4. But again, it's a matter of preference. It sort of matches what you had in mind. So now we have something that looks quite cloud-like. But obviously the black, it's still solid, so it's completely hiding the planet at the moment. But if we just took this color value and treated it as an alpha, so that the black would become treated as full transparency, and one, in other words, bright or white, would be treated as fully not transparent, you can see that those clouds now are lying over the top of our planet. It might be interesting to see, can I tweak I wanted to give these a little tint of color too. You could certainly do that. Might just, in my case, make it stand out a little bit more than white, because white is not really standing out that much. I kind of like those slightly purple ones. And again, I think by tweaking this one, these values here, you can probably, increase or decrease the density of the cloud over the planet. So if you've got too little or too much. And so then tweaking these, some of these values then over time will also give us something we can easily animate if we want the clouds to move around. So how might we do that? Well, let's go to we need the timeline editor. So I'm just going to, rather than put one in here, I'm just going to flick back to the layout tab for a second. Just check where the header is. I'm going to set it to the first frame, frame 1. I'm going to go back to shading. I'm going to set this location to 0, leave it at 0 and set a keyframe there. And then I'm going to go to 250 and go back to shading. And then I'm just going to try a value. I don't know what's going to look good. I'll try 1.8. And let's just hit the spacebar and see how that looks. So I don't want it to animate too fast. And perhaps that's a little bit quick now. So I might go back to, set this back to 250. And I'm going to set a lower number here, maybe 0.5, and hit I again to keyframe that. So then let's play that. I just wanted to move a little, but not that much. Yeah, and I'm quite happy with that, I think. So let's go back to that. So now we've got an animating planet as well, with a cloud animating over it. It's not going to appear very strongly in our animation at the moment, but it is going to give a little bit of extra movement to it. Right. So the last thing I wanted to cover was how to move a camera along a track, and that's quite a nice thing to be able to do. And how also to have the camera always point at a specific object, or so that we can always have it look exactly where we want it to look. So I'm going to shift right click there to set the 3D cursor to approximately that location, and we're going to add in an empty object with type plane axis, and we're going to call it camera target. This is the thing now that the camera is going to try and keep looking at all the time when we set it up. I'm going to take our current camera, and I just want to move it from where it is. I just want to take all of the displacement and rotation out of it. So I'm going to go over this pedal. Actually, if you just hover over these and hit the delete key, you'll find that it'll just clear all those back to 0. So now it's right at 0, 0, 0, looking straight down. But what we're going to do is connect it to a curve instead, and that'll give us something it can move along. So we're going to add a curve in that we can move the camera along. So let's add that curve, Bezier curve. I'm just going to go to top view, and I'm going to go to X-ray mode so we can see that curve that we just added in, and there it is. The curve can be edited in edit mode, so I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode, and you see what you actually, hang on, yeah, you can see that there are 2 points on the curve which you can select, and when you select the point you get this bar, these handles at the other end, so they can be used to change the shape of the curve. I'm going to select both points on the curve with shift, and I'm just going to G to move it out to the side here, and I'm going to maybe grab that end, and I'm going to go G to move it to here, out to there. I'm going to select this one and G to move it to here. What you find is you can change the shape of the curve quite a bit by rotating and scaling these ends. If I rotate this, you see now the curve is bending the other way, and if I scale it up, it's going to become more of a sweeping curve. Again, I could rotate that, and I could scale it. You can also drag these points individually by clicking on them and hitting G, but generally it's a good idea to keep them even by just scaling them, but it depends on what you're trying to do. They also don't have to stay flat, so you can start high, so GZ, I can have it coming down, as well as going around. So how do I, now that I've got my curve for the camera to move along, how do I constrain the camera to move along it? Well, let's select the camera object again. I'm going to call this camera path. Camera path. So I'm going to select the camera. I'm going to go to the constraints panel here. I'm going to add a follow path constraint. And then I'm going to, in the target box here, I'm going to select the camera path. And you can see now it's snapped onto the camera path. And there's an offset value here which you can change. I think generally it goes from 0 to -100, which will roll the camera along the path as that changes. So that obviously it's very easy to animate that value, just to slide it along the path. But the camera is just looking straight down at the moment, so how do we get it to look where we want it to look? Well, we get it to look how we want it to, where we want it to look by adding a track to constraint as well. And in this case we'll pick our camera target. And now just watch as we move this along this path, it's always going to stay focused on the camera target. But we can also animate the camera target over time, so we can look at different things at different moments. So I'm going to set this to -100, and that's going to become our keyframe at the start. And then I'm going to move it to 250, and I'm going to set it to 0, which is the other end. And again, keyframe that with I. So now we've got 2 keyframes, hopefully. Nope, that did not work. What did I do wrong there? Let's try to do that again. So 100 to 250, that was supposed to be 0. Did I not set that? I to keyframe it, there we go. Now it should be animating along the... Okay, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm goofing here. Offset. It's not showing this. So at frame 1, keyframe, at frame 250, keyframe. I'm lost. Oh, I think I just did I somehow disable the animation? No. I'll have to, oh, hang on, let's go back to the timeline editor and try and see. I've set extra keyframes maybe. Oh, I've set all these extra keyframes. Alright, I'm going to select these extra keyframes and delete them. That's what was wrong. Now, yeah, okay, so I accidentally set extra keyframes in the middle. There we go, now it's working fine. Alright, cool. So I'm going to split the view here. And vertical split. And I'm just going to lock the view on this side to the camera so that we can get a feel for where we want to be looking at any given time. I'm also going to switch this to rendered view so we can get a better sense of where it is. So yeah, I don't mind that. I'm kind of picking up the bit of the ship. So let's just watch this as it moves. And at this stage now it might be nicer to have a bigger view of the ship. So perhaps what I'd like this to do is for this camera track to come out more. So I'm going to select the Bezier curve. I'm going to select this end. I'm going to G and Y to move it further back. Okay. And I might move the camera target too. So I'm going to go back to the start. And I'm going to keyframe the camera target position there. And then I'm going to move to about here. And I'm going to just go on a side view here and move the camera target again. G. So that it's, sorry, I'm still in edit mode. Go back to object mode, camera target, and G. So just move the camera target so now we have more of a view of the whole space station. And I'm going to keyframe that, I, and then as I move towards the end, I think I'd like to be maybe looking more closer to the end. So let's look at the Bezier curve. I probably want it to come back in again quite a lot. So maybe what I'll do is select the Bezier curve. I'll go into edit mode with tab. I'm going to select both ends of that, and then I'm going to subdivide it. So let me see where the camera is when I'm quite alongside. It's there. Okay, so I want to take this end. That's not too bad. It's G to move that to about there, and then here G to come back around here. So near the end we're much closer again. Yeah, maybe not that close. Maybe stay on this side, but close. Okay. Okay, I think that gives us a slightly interesting set of camera moves. Let's have a look. Yeah, so there you go. So by moving the camera along the track, and I've adjusted the track a little bit just to suit what I want, and yeah, that's good. I'm quite happy with that. So once we've got our camera positions and everything else animated the way we want, the final thing to do is to set the output file format and actually render the animation. So to do that, you've got to set it to the correct sort of format to create a video file. So you click on the output tab here, and here you've got all the things like resolution and aspect ratio and frame rate. You want to go down here and set the folder. I'm going to set it to be the same folder that the files itself. Set that folder, and then I'm going to change the file format to FFmpeg video rather than PNG. So if you choose PNG, that's just a graphics file format. It's going to create one file, one static image per frame, which is not what we want. So FFmpeg video will allow us to actually create a video file. And then you've just got to go to the render tab here and go render animation. And Blender will start rendering the frames of the animation, and that is going to take a while. So just go away and have a break, leave your computer to it, make sure it's plugged in or it'll exhaust the battery. But yeah, once it's finished, you'll find in that folder you've got a file, a video file that you can then look at and upload that should reflect everything you set in your video to date. I'll post the results of my final video as well, along with these notes onto the CoderDojo Athenry page. Okay, so that's it, folks. That's the completion of this project. We've got our Christmas party next week, so I'm looking forward to seeing you all there, and we'll have some new projects for the new year. Thanks a million. Bye.